For this tutorial, I will be going over how to create jQuery events. Now, in previous tutorials, I've shown you how to create functions, how to even do jQuery methods. With this, though, with jQuery events, we are going to be able to create listeners that will listen for an element on our HTML page to be clicked on. But first, to do that, we need to set up our jQuery. Now, jQuery is an external library that we can link to our page that gives us access to a lot of pre-built functions that are extremely useful. So let's type in inside Google, just type in jQuery CDN, and I want to go to hosted libraries, and I'm going to do a search for jQuery.min.js. And I'm going to copy this link right here, and I'm going to paste it right here. Let me tab these over a little bit. Alright, now we have our jQuery library added in. Now what we need to do is we need to save our document. So I'm going to call this jQuery events. I'm going to save this in a folder that I have called tutorials. Now that we've got the document saved, I'm going to go and grab the link to this page. I'm going to paste it inside a browser. I recommend using Firefox for this. So Firefox is a great browser for developing JavaScript. And then I'm going to change the text inside my title tag here. I'm going to call it jQuery events. And so we've got jQuery events right there. Shows that these two are linked together. So now what I want to do is I'm going to create a button in HTML. Make sure that this is in between the two body tags here. And I'm just going to call this button 1. And I'm going to go up in here. I'm going to declare my script tags. You always need your script tags whenever you're going to be writing JavaScript. And whenever you're going to be doing a jQuery event listener, we need to make sure that we have a document.ready function built and then have all of our listeners inside of that. Now, the jQuery ready listener looks like this. So I'm going to do document, I'm going to do .ready function. Make sure we have a semicolon there. Alright, and now we can put all of our jQuery listeners right inside here. Now, what exactly is a jQuery event listener? It is something that actually waits for something to be clicked on. Now, we've got an HTML element right here. It's a button tag. So what we can do is we can do our $sign. It says that we're going to be using jQuery. Set up our two parentheses, single quotes, and then we're going to type in button. And we're going to do dot click parentheses. And we're going to do a function. Alright, and what we have set up right here is a listener. So it's going to listen for a button to get clicked on, and when it does get clicked on, then it's going to do a specific action that we want it to complete. Now the document.ready function that we've set up right here, what this does, now I did say that you need to have this around your listener events, but the reason for that is your entire page will be allowed to load up before it even runs any JavaScript that is inside of this. And the way JavaScript and HTML and CSS work, when a browser renders it, is it reads from the top line down to the bottom. And if this listener was to get read first, before all of your HTML was set up, then it would not be able to put that listener on top of that HTML tag, and it wouldn't work. So if you want your jQuery events to work, you need to make sure that they're in a document.ready. It will simplify your life a lot, and it'll prevent a lot of issues when you're trying to get your code to work. All right, for this, we're just going to do an alert testing, just to make sure that this is working. So I'm going to go to my browser. I'm going to refresh it. Now if I click on button 1, it says testing. Now if I just add in a few more buttons, call it 2, 3, and 4. Doesn't matter which button I click on, they are all a button tag. And so our jQuery event listener is listening for a button to be clicked on. And once it's clicked on, then it gets triggered. All right, now what if we wanted to put a listener on a class or an ID or whatever? We can do that. So let's put a class inside one of these buttons, or two of them. We're going to do a class, and we'll call this class btn group 1. And we'll do class btn group 2. I'll copy this and paste it. Okay, so we've got two different types of classes. We've got the btn group 1 and we've got the btn group 2. Now we can go to here, so we've got button. So if we want to select any button that has that class, so we can do button period btn group 1. And the reason for the period is the period represents class. Button, of course, is the HTML tag, and this is the name of the class. So now if btn group 1 gets clicked on, that is inside, and as long as that class is inside of a button HTML tag, then this alert will get triggered. Now let's customize this a little bit, and we'll say btn group, or we'll just call it group 1 has been clicked. Now we can set up another event listener and put this as a 2, so it's going to listen for these ones right here to get clicked on. And we'll put 2 here. Now if we refresh the page, click on this one, it says group 1 has been clicked. That is correct. Click on this one, it says group 2 has been clicked. And then 3 is technically going to be group 1, so group 1 and group 2. All right, but what if we want to set it up so it can tell which class it is and what action to complete? So what we can do is we can set it back to button. So we just got button.click. Remove the second listener. And then we're going to do a var class name equals $, 2 parentheses, and then this. Now in a previous tutorial, I covered how to use this. Now you can pass this directly into a function that we would have built. In this instance, whenever we're doing an event listener, we can just declare this statement immediately, because we're clicking on a button so that it detects the button's been clicked, and now we can specify, alright, I want to grab all the data from this button that has been clicked on, and I want to grab certain data. In this case, we want to grab the name of the class. So we're going to do this period attr, 2 simple quotes there, and we're going to say class. So we're grabbing the class attribute. Now we can do a statement, or a question, or an if statement. So we're going to do if class name is equal to btn group 1, then we can do an alert that says group 1 has been clicked. And we can do an else statement, so if it's not group 1, then it has to be group 2. So we're going to copy this right here, paste it here, and we're going to say group 2 has been clicked. So let's save it and refresh it. It says group 1 has been clicked, group 2, yep, group 3, or group 1, and group 2. Because we alternated these, so we've got 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So we can use this statements inside event listeners, and we can have it listen to a click event. But click isn't the only type of event listener you can set up. You can set it up when you focus on inside an input field or when you blur out of it. Now, focus means when you actually click inside. Blur represents when you click outside of it, and so it's no longer focused. Then we've got the key press. So that's whenever you press a key on your keyboard, it is going to trigger that event listener, and then we can do different stuff with it if we want. And then we've got the mouse enter and the mouse leave. Okay. So we've got this event listener that's listening to the button, so let's set up a different HTML element. So this time we're going to do just an input field. And let's put this inside a div container just so it's a little separated from our buttons. And we're going to do input. Type text. So save that, refresh the page, and we've got an input field here. Now I don't like it being so close to these buttons here, so I'm actually going to push it down a little bit. So I'm going to do an inline style CSS formatting. I'm going to do a margin dash top of 50px. Okay, so it's pushed down a little bit, separated. Awesome. Alright, and let's put in a few more input fields. So I've got 3 of these here. Now, with HTML, we can set up some placeholder text. So that's text that will be inside the input field by default until you actually enter something in there. It's just going to have a little help text. So I'm going to type in enter text here. I'm going to go here and do placeholder, enter number here. And placeholder, enter something here. So refresh the page. Now we've got enter text here, enter number here, enter something here. And I can click in here, start typing, and the placeholder text disappears. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another event listener. So I'm going to do my $sign. I'm going to specify input as the what's going to be listened for. And then we're going to do, let's do the key press. Key press function, 2 parentheses, then our 2 curly brackets. We always need the 2 curly brackets because we're going to put some sort of statement in here that we want it to accomplish. And for this particular listener event, we want it to grab the data that's inside our placeholder here. So we are going to do var $sign, specify this dot attr, and we are going to specify placeholder. Okay. And let's just do an alert that says, oh, we don't quite have our variable set up here. We're going to do text, var text equals this right here. So it's going to grab the text that is inside the placeholder. And we'll type in text here, because that is the variable name that we've created. And we refresh this. And now when I focus inside here, inside this input box, if I click a button, it now says enter text here. If I click here, it says enter number here, or enter something here. Now that's not particularly useful in a world example, because if we're trying to type something into an input box, the last thing we want to do is have an alert box popping up every time we press something. So what we can do is we can set up another custom div. I'm going to do div ID dynamic text. And for this, we're actually going to, instead of grabbing the placeholder attribute, we're actually going to grab the text that is being typed in. Now to do that, we can do attr. We're grabbing the attribute value. So if you're familiar with using input boxes, any data that gets entered inside here gets assigned to the value attribute. Now this is one way to write it. Another way that you can do it that is even easier is just .val. Okay, and using what we've covered from previous tutorials, we're going to select our dynamic text ID that we've created, this div right here, and we're going to do .text, and we are going to enter in whatever gets typed in. So save it right here. Let's refresh it. And now, as I start to enter text here, it shows up here. Start to delete, and it gets deleted there. And it will do that for each and every input field that is getting typed. Now, what if I want it to only show that dynamic text for a specific input field? Well, we can definitely do that. So let's do our var placeholder, and we're going to put in that variable that we created previously. So we're going to do .attr, and we're going to specify placeholder. All right. So what this will do is it's going to grab the text that's inside here, and now we can do if statement if placeholder is equal to enter text here, then it will allow us to insert the data in there. So refresh this. So if I enter anything here or here, it doesn't do anything, but as soon as I type something here, it shows up. All right, so next, so that is our key press. Now that detects pretty much any button that we click on, except for a few specific ones, such as like a shift or a control or whatever button, but that will detect pretty much any number, any letter that you press on, and then you can do something with it. All right, so the key down works just about the same way, except it triggers when you're pressing down on the button. So to show you how that works, we're going to change this key press to key down. Let's refresh this. And as I press down on each of the buttons, it gets triggered. Now as I press the delete button, same thing. It's just based off of me pressing down on the button. So it works pretty much the same way as the key press. The only difference is the key down will actually work with any type of key that's on your keyboard. So it will work for the shift, it will detect the control, it will detect the alt or option keys. Whereas the key press works specifically for numbers and letters and those type of keys that you click on. Now the key up is a bit different. So if we do key up and save it, and let's refresh the page, the event does not get triggered until we actually lift our finger off of the key. So if I press down and hold D, it doesn't actually do anything until I lift up my finger, and then it adds the D. So as I start typing in, it only grabs the data based off of each time my finger lifts off the key. So it detects the key up functionality. So see how I'm holding the delete button? This right here does not update because I still have my finger on the delete button, but as soon as I lift up from the delete button, it detects, grabs the value that's inside there, and then deletes everything. Alright, the mouse enter and the mouse leave work a little bit different. These are based off of if your mouse moves over something, if it moves off of something. So to give you an example of that, let's do another listener. So we're going to do let's select our button. So we're going to do button, and we're going to do mouse enter. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so whenever we hover over a button or mouse over it, that something's going to happen. In this case, we're going to specify this, and we're going to do add class. So we're going to add a class to a specific button whenever we hover over it. And the class we're going to add in is format btn. Now we have not actually specified a class called format button yet, so we're going to set up our style tags. We're going to do period, which represents class, format btn, and we are going to give it a background of green, color of FFF, which is white, and we're going to do a padding of 5px by 20px, and a border of 1px solid green. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up another event listener that's based off of us actually moving off of the button. So we're going to do the mouse leave. And in this case, we're going to actually remove the class. Remove class. Alright, so let's refresh it and see what happens. So we hover over the button. The class gets added in called format button that has all those different formatting on it. And as I hover off of it, then the class gets removed. So as you can see, we get a different type of effect going on here. Now, theoretically, what we're doing exactly right here, we could do with straight CSS. We could do a format button, colon, hover, and then we could do that. However, we can do all sorts of different stuff with mouse enter, mouse leave, different functions that you want to get called. For example, all right, we're formatting the button by just adding that class in. Now we can also like do select the dynamic text, hashtag dynamic text. We can do .text. We can say we are hovering over. Oh, and let's set up another variable. So we're going to do var btn name equals $this .attr. Alright, so we've got our different buttons, we've got the classes. Now we don't want to grab that, we want to grab the text in there. So we're actually going to do .text. Alright, so we're grabbing the text from each of these buttons. And then we're going to do plus btn name. So let's refresh this. Now it's, as I'm hovering over button 1, it says we are hovering over button 1. We are hovering over button 2, 3, and 4. And we can keep on adding in different things that we would like to happen. We could have an alert box pop up. We can have really whatever we want to do. So the mouse enter and the mouse leave can be very useful for whatever type of functionality that you want to accomplish. Alright, so the focus and the blur, let's cover those now. So let's set up a listener on the input box again. Except this time it's going to be for focus. Okay. So for this, we're going to actually format the input box when we focus inside it, and then we're going to change it back when we click outside of it. So we're going to do this add class, and this class that we're going to create is called input btn. Okay, so we're going to go to our CSS and we're going to set up the formatting for that. So we're going to do input let's change this class name to format input. It's a little bit more accurate. Okay. So now we've got format input, and we're going to do a border of 1px solid green. I'm going to do a font dash size of 30px, padding of 5px by 10px. Alright, so we save that, let's refresh it, and let's see what happens. So I click inside here, and the input box gets that class added in that formats the input box to look like this. Now I can click on one of these, each one of these, and it adds in that class. Now we haven't said anything to remove the class, so that's all that's going to happen. As soon as it hits that state, it stays like that. But what if we wanted it to revert back to the state that it was previously? To do that, all we need to do is let's copy all this that we wrote, paste it below, and this time we're going to do a blur. And then we're going to do remove class. So it's removing the format input class. So refresh this, we click in here, it's got the formatting, we click out of it, and we click into the other one, and it switches between them. Or I can just click out, and they all go back to the same state that they were in. And not only that, alright, so we've got these input boxes that have a listener for the focus and blur, but we still have the listener event for the key up functionality. So if I start entering in here, it still is getting all of that information. So you can start stacking a bunch of different event listeners to accomplish all sorts of fun stuff. So we've got a key up event listener, we've got a mouse leave, we've got a focus, we've got a blur. So you can have lots of fun by using event listeners to create any sort of functionality or widget that you would like to build. All right, and that concludes the tutorial for this tutorial.